My name is John Cornicello, and I welcome you to my series of interactive photo conversations. You can always check the schedule at cornicello.com/conversations for dates and times. Um, Today, my guest is photographer Nate Gowdy, who's been around the country photographing political campaigns leading up to the recent election. But that isn't all he does, so I'm going to let Nate introduce himself and talk about this and his other projects. So please welcome Nate Gowdy.
Hey.
Hey.
Well, good morning or afternoon. John invited me, and I'm back and settled in Seattle. But for the last 5 years, I've been documenting presidential politics and protests in the age of Trump. Started in the summer of 2015, and thought the project would end after the inauguration of our first woman president, and it wasn't to be. And so I've just been hitting it hard for the last few years, and then there's been a few life distractions and stuff, but kind of through it all, I feel pretty good about it. I've been to probably documented roughly 290 events across 23 states and DC, and I've and so if I always said the project would be over once we have a new president, and so ideally the final chapter would be Biden's inauguration, but I'm not so sure that's going to be an in-person thing.
Wow.
And so we'll see what happens, but if it happens, I'll be there. But I could talk and talk, so I'll let John kind of guide me.
Well, what got you started on the first campaign? What made you decide to follow this?
Yeah, the first campaign, I was photographing, kind of trying to get on the inside with the Hillary Clinton campaign operations in Seattle, and they were letting me into some events. And then they kind of, certain people liked having me, but you could tell the official campaign go-to person didn't really see a need or didn't really want to prioritize it, and was kind of passive aggressive with not including me. Who was it? Madeleine Albright came, and she didn't even tell me about it, and everyone's like, "Where were you, Nate?" And it's like, I didn't get an invite, and it didn't. And so anyway, Bernie Sanders came to Seattle on I think it was August 9th, 2015, and he came to downtown to Westlake Plaza for a Social Security anniversary, the 80th. And it was kind of closest proximity I'd had to a presidential candidate, just standing by him, in the main area. And when he went up, the whole thing was interrupted by Black Lives Matter activists who antagonized the crowd and called everyone white supremacists, and just kind of, Bernie didn't end up speaking, and it became a national news story, and it was really uncomfortable. And it was even more uncomfortable, a crowd that I thought I was socio-politically aligned with, hearing them yell all these nasty things at the activists. And so I went from there, and at first I was disappointed, but it turned into, those were really, years later, next year, CNN reached out for those images, and it was a real kind of a real point and milestone in the campaign, because it started a whole conversation that we're still having nationally. But then I followed Bernie to a small fundraiser that I paid for with my own money, and then I photographed him. I biked up to UW, the stadium at University of Washington, and blogged my photos. And like a day or two later, I get an email from Time Magazine, the deputy director of photography, and asking if he can give me a phone call. And I was like, shoot, wow, okay. And he said he thought the work was over the course of a few days, not just one day. And he was real impressed. And so we kept the correspondence going and kept in communication. And that gave me the confidence to just do it. And the Trump thing was just happening, just beginning. And it was just so bizarre that I thought, well, I got to photograph this. And I was really drawn to it. And I'd already been drawn to certain photographers' work out of Iowa and New Hampshire, and I saw their photos and it was great. But I thought, well, I could do that, and so I booked week-long trips to both states in September, and here I am alone amongst cornfields and having the time of my life, kind of hanging out with Mike Huckabee and Jeb Bush and just all these, and being up close and access to them, and just doing it for me to make the pictures. And my dad's kind of like, well, how are you doing this? How are you, well, I got just enough money, and I was sleeping in my rental car, doing whatever I could to make it happen and get by. And so kept the correspondence with Time going. And eventually long story short, they hooked me up with press badge that was good for the remainder of the campaign. So even when they didn't want to hire me or have me on assignment, they still helped me with access. So they were kind of my sponsor, and having a Time press badge for my first time ever being doing photojournalism essentially nationally was like having a golden ticket. And so I got real fortunate there. And then by having eventually being published, having my byline on time.com, that led to other editors finding me, and others found me through Instagram via hashtags and things. And so it just kind of ran with it, and did what I could, and made the most of each trip. And I guess one thing I like to think differentiated my pictures from everyone else's is that they were just doing their job. And here I kind of had I went out of my way to work out logistics and fund these travels, and kind of just really soaked it up and trying to turn it into a long-term project. Whereas other people are, I primarily shooting for the wire agencies, and they're technically brilliant. They're very good at what they do, especially at filing the photos on deadline, which I've never been good at. And they just speedy, solid, and great imagery, but they're not artists, they're technicians. And so they have a to-do list for their clients. And so getting a good surround of each event and working fast. But if you put all their images on a wall, I'm not sure I'd be able to differentiate whose is whose.
Well,
And
talking
so,
about that, you've had a pretty distinct style of these really high contrast black and whites.
yeah, so
Did you start out with that, or did you just kind of work into that?
So when I started photography years, in 2011, my personal work, I made black and white because I've always been so slow and at color corrections, and so precise, but it slows me down. And then also I've always felt that my color editing is a little less refined and fine-tuned than my black and white editing. So essentially it was a way to save time for work that wasn't paying me. So it was a way to prioritize it and share it and get it out there without spending too much time with it. And so, but the black and white made for a distinctive look that was reminiscent of, the high watermark, the 60s and 70s, the political photography that you see out of that era. So it has a kind of a timelessness to it. And so it made it distinctive, and people recognize it.
Yeah, Michael.
So you were still using film, or were you already into digital?
I've never shot film. I shot film as a kid, the 90s point and shoots, but where you press the button on the camera. And I own my dad's old Hasselblad, but I've never used it. Really. I've experimented, but never used it on assignment or anything. No.
And combined with those high contrast black and whites, you also did a lot with looked like a pretty long telephoto lens.
During that first campaign, 2016, I had a Canon 5D Mark III that I upgraded to soon upgraded to a 5D 5DS and a 5DSR, which are 50 megapixel Canon cameras, and they're wonderful, amazing. I still use them. That's my main camera, and then I have eventually around 2017 I got a Leica Q, which is a fixed 28, and it's a super sharp wonderful little camera. So when I have to carry two bodies, I use that for wide shots, and I use my Canon for telephoto things.
So what was the focal length of that lens you used that
yeah,
tour?
so in the 2016 campaign, I was shooting often with a 17 to 40, and then eventually a 16 to 35, because the 17 to 40 was wearing out and wasn't so sharp. And then also using my my oldest lens I own, which is a 70 to 300. Little compact little lens, super sharp and fast. Well, I mean, the depth of field only, it's a 4 to 5.6 depending on how zoomed in you are, but it's a wonderful lens that I never see anyone else using.
Image stabilized.
What's up?
It's an image stabilized lens.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've been hard on it, but it's still going. And then and so this now currently I will just go with my Leica 28 and my Canon 70 to 300, or for the rallies I bought a Sigma contemporary. It's a 150 to 600. And oh my gosh, I can hand hold it at 1/50th of a second and get tack sharp pictures zoomed in.
Cool.
Of course, I think I'm a little better at holding it still than, I'm not sure everyone can do that, but it's an amazing lens for $1,000. So
Yeah, it didn't, but you had an incident, I guess, photographing, or you got rules changed in the Trump campaign for long lenses or something like that. Do I recall?
oh yeah, I'm not sure. I so the Trump campaign, rarely they would let the traveling press pool, the main guys who are traveling on Air Force One, they would let them in the press pen in the buffer zone, which is up close, which a lot of campaigns, it's a normal thing. You get either so long up there or the whole time, but usually you get to go up close. And the Trump campaign never lets the photographers up close. But on occasion they did. And so, except for the traveling press pool. And so I got to go up close to him at 2 rallies. I've probably been to about 30 rallies total, or not, well, about 24 rallies plus other convention events where I photographed him. And he, and I got up there, and my goal is always to make images that I haven't seen before. Make something different than because this is the most photographed person in the world. And so I went up there with my, I think I didn't have the 600 yet, but I had a 400 or 500 or 400 with an extender from a friend, and just super zoomed in with all the pores and everything. And because if I'm close, God, I'm gonna get closer. See how close we can get. And yeah, I think they soon after they stopped letting photographers up close. So on occasion. So I don't know. So I don't know if there's how much there is to that, but yeah, it was kind of funny.
Yeah, and if anyone in the audience has questions for Nate, please ask them. Paul, you're muted.
Oh, Paul's.
Hi, Nate.
Hey, Paul.
You said that Time Magazine reached out to you at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Had you been hashtagging Time Magazine before that in order to get their attention?
No, I had not. I used to hashtag Donald Trump and stuff, but at that time I wasn't even Instagramming my work. That was before. I believe what happened was I had an acquaintance from the Eddie Adams workshop, which if you're not familiar with it, you might look up for student and budding photographers that I'd gone to in 2013, been invited to in 2013. I believe an acquaintance from there was a photo editor intern. And I think he may have shown, I believe he showed the photo team my blog post, and the right person took to it, the person in charge of that coverage. And but it was a huge breakthrough for me to go from just kind of being a local photographer in the Seattle's LGBTQ plus community. I'm straight, but I'm very immersed in the community. And as well as just a kind of a wedding photographer or whatever I could do to get by.
Yeah.
And so it was a huge, I'd only, when they reached out that year, I'd only been a photographer for less than 5 years. So I was like, oh, okay. It gave me the confidence I needed to take it on the road.
Yeah. Good job.
Thanks.
So besides the campaigns, you've been working on a book with the Seattle School District? Is that?
Yeah. So, my whole existence this year has been working on a book celebrating Seattle Public Schools as queer and trans students, families, and staff. And so, and I got that commission. They reached out, the health director, Lisa Love, health manager, reached out last July of 2019 and gave me a call, and she had seen, we just debuted, me and a core team had just debuted the American Superhero Project, and which is a project that celebrates how we're all uniquely American. And it basically, it's a studio, shot in studio on a yellow backdrop. And I can show these in a bit. Well, I guess I can show them now, probably.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. God, I should have been doing that the whole time. Let me figure this out. Did I do it? Sharing my screen?
We see your clean desktop.
Yeah, cool. All right. So the superhero project, we got the idea from my friend Vishvajit. He's out of New York, and he goes around, he travels around doing he's a cartoonist and a speaker and a performance artist. And his performance art is dressing like Captain America, sick Captain America with brown skin, turban, and beard. And he just basically challenges people's stereotypes, and ignorance, and with humor, compassion, and art. And man, look him up. Google Vishvajit Singh. He's a really incredible writer and interviewer. And we became close, and we connected when he was in Seattle. Seattle's been really receptive to his work. And we decided to do him, me, and my good friend Gregory Evans, and mother Christy Scoresmith. We teamed up to host a shoot where we would just have our friends and friends of friends dress up as a diverse crowd of people dressing up as variations of Captain America. And we were hoping for maybe 10 to 15 people to join us, and over 40 people did. And we took these pictures, which we thought would be the focus. And I had maxed out my credit card, buying all these Captain America costumes, which probably didn't help my relationship at the time. And but we found out, we interviewed everyone on their thoughts on being American. They're asking them their vulnerabilities, their superpowers, their strengths, defining moments in their lives, and what it means to them to be American. And people were really receptive. And so we had all these people come out, and we found out their stories were just incredible, just people we knew. And so we started branching out, and we eventually got our local Congresswoman, Pramila Jayapal, who's the head of the House Progressive Caucus. She participated, and then we got the former mayor of Houston, Anise Parker, who was the first, oh, here, I should be flipping through. I can't walk and talk, it's chew bubble gum. So I'll just go through these. This is Deb Haaland, she's Congresswoman out of New Mexico, and she's the first Native American Congresswoman ever. And so we had gone to DC eventually to pick up to get some Congresswomen to participate. These are Christie's sons, who are both identical twins, and they're transgender. And they're this is my favorite image of the project, because they inspired it. The whole idea was hers. She approached Vishvajit with it, and we didn't know each other at the time. It was at one of his lectures, and my head just about exploded, because I was like, oh my gosh, what an idea. She proposed, what if my sons could dress up as Captain America alongside Vish, and how, and stressed how empowering that might be for them and people who are othered in their everyday lives. So here's Vish, here's gosh, I'm getting a brain fart. I know her name. What's that?
Tlaib?
No, it's not Rashida Tlaib, but
Ilhan Omar.
I know her name.
Ilhan Omar.
Yes, I'm just talking so fast. So she's the first Muslim Congresswoman, and I hold her, our team holds her in very high esteem. This is Joe Wynn, who's a local state representative, who's like in Seattle area, he's like our local AOC. He's just quite a guy. This is Riz Rollins, who's a well-known DJ personality and just person in the community here in Seattle who it was really wonderful to spend an afternoon hearing his story. This is this kid was 6 months old when he photographed him, and his mother's an Eritrean refugee who she's always been triggered by the red, white, and blue. And she wanted her son to participate in this and someday look back on this photo and as a proud American. And so, and then here's Congresswoman Jayapal. Here's a family I photographed for years. Their son had just got returned from boot camp. They become very close friends. This is Supreme Court Justice Mary Yu in Washington State. She's the first lesbian, Asian, and Latina ever to sit on the bench. And so, and we've become close where she'll text me here and there, and just just kind of the people we've come to know through this, because first of all, the photo shoots put people in a vulnerable position, because it's really something to ask someone else to dress up in front of a camera. You know, a lot of us aren't comfortable in front of cameras, let alone a professional photo shoot. And here they're dressing up. So it's a very vulnerable place to be, especially for public personalities and figures and change makers. But then after that kind of eases people up, and we go in and we talk about their story. And so it's, you feel by the end, it's created this connection. You feel like you're, you know each other. And I think that's what this project is about. It's about building connection, and to kind of, because, it celebrates our differences, but highlights our commonalities, and just embraces what makes us each uniquely American. This is Giselle. When we interviewed her, she only had $2 in her account. She had been a valedictorian, or she should have been valedictorian of her high school, but she graduated her junior year, and since she wasn't a senior, they wouldn't let her have it. And she got into UW, and her mother dropped her off at school. And a week later, her mom was deported by the Trump regime, deported with no heads up. Her mother had fled Mexico before she was born from an abusive partner, and has been working for 20 years with her dad, who's German American, to do it the right way and become a citizen, and with money, time, money, and lawyer on lawyers. And here she was deported, and her father fell into depression, and his wife had been his caregiver. He has degenerative disc disease, and so he fell into alcoholism, and she missed 3 weeks of school, moving him to Mexico. And here the school tried to kick her out of school. And so now I don't think she's in school anymore.
Wow.
Because she doesn't have any support here, no family. And so anyway, I keep up with her here and there, but she's just, she wants to be a filmmaker. And I won't go through all these, a lot of these stories aren't on the website yet. And so I still have a lot of editing to do, but
I
just
put a link in the chat.
Cool. Oh, sweet. So yeah, I could go on and on. I'm so proud and attached to all these stories. And so what these stories did was that was a long digression. So the director of the school district saw some of the portraits on BuzzFeed News, which debuted the project for us, and they saw, and the Smithsonian has also reached out, and I met with them twice, and they would like to. They've been clear that I need to wrap up the project before they can acquire the work. But that's really exciting that the curator there is very interested. He compared the project to Avedon project,
Wow.
where Avedon documented for Rolling Stone in the '76 election, documented high-profile political power brokers in the country. And so, anyway. The school project we just finished in. I started in January. It started in earnest in January, and January, February, we photographed and interviewed 43 families, or 43 individuals and their families, and then luckily we got it done just in time right as COVID arrived. So we'd kind of already gotten our content. And then I spent the next few months editing it, like taking people's words, maintaining their voice. We transcribed their interviews using software. And then I spent about 3 months ghostwriting everything, condensing 30 to 60-minute interviews down to 300 to 600 words each. This was my boss, Lisa Love. This was kind of her idea, and she's the one who made this happen. And the school gave me a substantial, in my world, budget to work with. And so I was able to prioritize this important work. But it was the biggest undertaking I've ever done. And we basically finished the book in eight months, 100-page hardcover linen book with all these stories. And I think if this were adapted or even just found a publisher, I think this would be a bestseller. I think there's a real need for this kind of work. These stories, my photos are one thing, but the stories are just exceptional. And I'm intimately familiar with, or, intimately just kind of, I had to write them and edit them and everything. But they still choke me up. And so I think, so we printed 500 copies, and then I got to revise it, make some revisions, and then pretty soon we'll have 500 more copies, so the second edition will be the one I'm getting all the orders of, because it's how I envision the first edition being. And but the school district's selling it at cost, $40 a book. And this is actually my favorite photo. She did the superhero project, and when she did the superhero project, she didn't want to show her face because her vulnerability was her shyness, but her power was her muscles. So in her superhero portrait, she's turning her head with her hair covering her face and showing off her muscles. And she's transgender, but she didn't want that stated. She didn't want her name. She goes by initials in here, OM, but in the superhero project, didn't even want to show her face and this note that she's transgender. And now she's, just kind of more and more kind of comfortable with it and proud of it in public. And so this is the first school board president who's gay. This is Brennan, who works as a health education specialist for the school district. Remarkable person. Just so many, I got to meet all these families, and they're just wonderful. And what I like about the design I did for the book, and I worked with designer Daniel Berman, he did the templates, and then I kind of made it my own and took off with it. You can engage with it as much as you want. You can just look at the pictures, you can read the pull quotes, or you can, just take in as much as you want to or have time for. This is my boss and her family. This is her adopted daughter, Sakura, wearing her traditional Maine, I hope I'm saying it right, Maine clothing. Oops, one moment. So anyway, John, yeah,
these are great.
This is the school district's lead lawyer, Ronald. So yeah. Anyway.
So as this project finished, then this year's campaign started.
Yeah. So this project took over my year, and it worked out because I was hoping to be on the campaign trail all year, but COVID, 2020 had other ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm glad, because I was so busy with this, and this went over our timeline, which was, I think we were a little too optimistic as far as how long it would take us to do this. I was supposed to be done in April and didn't finish till August, September. And so I'm glad I had that extra time, and I'm glad there wasn't really anything going on in the world to, so it didn't have any wanderlust or FOMO.
Yeah.
We were missing out,
So on the campaign trail this year, you had some hard drive issues.
Yeah. So I wasn't on the trail until, so I started this summer. I was able to photograph before the camp. I just lead into it, but before we were able to, I was able to hit the campaign trail during the last week of the campaign before Election Day. I photographed the anti-mask rallies. And so in Olympia and in Seattle and Salem, Oregon, which is kind of a whoa, you know, in Oregon, it's a whole nother level of, I mean, these rallies had every conspiracy theory you can think of. It is represented at these protests. I mean, yeah, I guess they are protests. Excuse the quote marks, but so it was a chance to. But after photographing these, you know, you're surrounded. It's like a big COVID party, and you're surrounded by people who don't even believe in COVID. And so I would have, every time I'd go, I'd have to take all these precautions, like, you know, I'd have to strip down and we didn't know as much about it as we do now. And so I would have to strip my clothes afterwards in my car, spray them down, bag them up, put hand sanitizer all over myself, you know, and then quarantine for 14 days. And so, but, you know, we were pretty isolated anyway, so I wasn't missing out on much, but just kind of, I think these photos will age well, because like, what a weird, what is, I don't know. I don't have words for it sometimes. Just another reality. Here, let me move.
Yeah,
So,
you're muted, Michael.
this is Tim Eyman. He's a figure out here in
And
Washington.
that's a good thing. Have you ever thought about going back to some of these areas where these people are protesting, you know, wearing masks and everything else, especially now since, was it 12 million people, 12 million Americans have had COVID, and what, a quarter of a million people have died, to see what they have to say now, or hasn't it registered yet?
I'm not, I think I read in the news enough of what they have to say. I'm not really interested in what they have to say. I'm interested in kind of what I see. And so I'm just interested in the pictures and getting quotes from them, which would be very powerful. And it would be great if I had a team to work with, but I'm first and foremost interested in the documenting. And it's kind of hard for me to engage these people. People like, how can you surround yourselves with these people? And the fact is, I'm a cis het white guy from the Midwest, and I can do a pretty bang up job of fitting in. You know, I can channel that kind of, and they're all polite, nice people, but then, you know, these events and the president dredge up the total grossness out of them. And so I'm just not interested in what they have to say. I've heard it, and it's it's just kind of, so by the way I'm able to function at these events is I just keep my mouth shut. I don't engage.
But are these protests continuing? We're in the Seattle West Coast area?
Not recently. Not that I know of, but when they do happen, I try to hit them up. Usually they're up here in Washington State. They're in Olympia, which is the state capital.
Mm-hmm.
Here, it's just a scene. They don't believe in vaccines. They think Bill Gates and George Soros are out to get us. They want to chip us or whatever. They, you name it. It's represented. Just such a weird time. So I went from going to these protests, and I thought, oh, this one boggles my mind. Like, and then but basically went from shooting these in April and May and thinking, okay, I got to really hunker down on my book for the school district. And then the Black Lives Matter anti-police brutality protests revved up. And so I think our society basically went from exchanging bread recipes, in isolation, to a full-bore conversation about systemic racism in our country. And so, I would say I missed 90% of those protests that were happening here in Seattle because I was I was sidelined, and it was really hard for me because all I wanted to do was be out there making these pictures. But the pictures I'll show you next, I did get, I'm really, really proud of. And so I photographed they started in Seattle with the downtown riots on May 30th, which it was a peaceful protest. And then the police, I call it a police riot. The police separated the crowd and started pepper spraying, and they always kind of, they started it. And so while I was down there, I had never had any fear of other protesters. I was afraid of the police. But squad cars were lit on fire, and the smoke was so black. It was middle of summer in Seattle, so we have daylight till 9:30, around that time of the year, or 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10.
It's actually even later, 10 or 10:30.
Yeah, and it was 3:30 to 6:30 when I was down there. And I guess I should get to those photos. You can look at these on my website, I suppose. I just kind of want to show them all. Actually, before I get there, this rally in Salem, I actually lost it because they were abusing counter protesters who were healthcare workers, and they were being harassed. And I'll never be certain, but my mother passed away and at the end of January, before COVID was really on many of our radars. And she died of the exact symptoms that many COVID victims die from, pulmonary embolism in her blood clots in her lungs. And she was perfectly healthy, great diet, took great care of herself, recently retired school teacher. And so, and these people harassing the healthcare workers saying, oh, you guys are just sent here from George Soros. And these people working on the front lines and I actually lost my cool. Which is very rare for me because I've surrounded myself with these people, and it's actually I've been to the RNC in 2016, which, coming out of that, driving out of that, I was convinced these people would have voted for Hitler if this were 1930s Germany. I mean, they are so far gone, we all see it, but it's just another. Here, I was trying to find one of the healthcare workers that they were yelling at. All right. Oh, here's the healthcare workers. They were all socially distanced. And there were people just with a megaphone just walking right up to them and getting in their space. And they're just nasty. So anyway, you can go on these are all on my website though.
Yeah.
And so here's the protests, Black Lives Matter protests. These aren't in order. Like this one, many of these I shot at CHOP, which you can also Google if you're not familiar with, but it was where CHOP happened in Seattle, where there were protests that led up to it, and then the police department abandoned a police precinct, and they abandoned a neighborhood, and well, from there things devolved because you got a whole neighborhood that police weren't answering calls, and you had anarchists who wanted to torch the place, and you had protesters defending the precinct, and then you had people giving aid to the homeless population, and so there's also a lot of mental illness, rampant mental illness, and there was some violence at night, and it started out as kind of this fun, kind of a lot of art and celebration and conversations, and it was just a really neat time in the beginning of CHOP. This little girl kind of just, her and her mom and sister were touring the area when I photographed, Rolling Stone reached out and I photographed CHOP for them over the course of 2.5 days. This picture is from the protests, the riots downtown when I said I was afraid of the police. This is a little girl who was down there. Who knows why? Maybe they're there for the protests. Maybe they were just kind of happened, to be down there trying to catch a bus home. But this girl is cowering from the police officers who were, as that officer walked by me, he said, how's it going? In a cheerful voice. They were having fun. And I was terrified too, standing there, and these guys who are, and they they sound like stormtroopers with their masks on, like, hey, how are you doing? It was just such a disconnect. And so I think this picture captures that day for me well, the violence that the police were perpetrating on peaceful protesters. This is the garden at CHOP that was being done in the park, in Cal Anderson Park. This is for the first time in the history of Pike Place Market, they took they did something like this where they didn't have all the lights on and they had BLM. And so I got down there one night to photograph that. Here's a bubble machine going off at CHOP. This is a police precinct. The most surreal part of that experience was the night before the police raided the encampment, the occupation. I sat with a bunch of people smoking pot around a bonfire right in front of this police precinct. It was insane. It was total anarchy. Here's a march. This was one morning at CHOP when I was there for Rolling Stone. There was an argument, so I rushed toward the argument, and these are barriers the city put up so no one could run down run a car into the encampment. But there was an argument. I went toward it. Then I realized I heard a cocking sound, and a guy had just locked a loaded semi-automatic rifle, and he was yelling. And so I took cover. And this is in the morning, as in you can see at the top of this image, there's a guy eating breakfast, and he's just casually watching this happen. And I'm ducked behind this barricade, but I got a picture of this guy who armed himself. I forget, God, I can't think of what they called him. His name was Rick, but they had two-clip Rick. And it turns out he was always kind of just high temper, nice guy, but don't cross him. And he was one of the protesters. Well, it turns out he was an undercover police informant later on. And yeah. And so here's the day from those protests downtown Seattle. People who were there and who were around during the WTO riots said it was crazier than any day of the WTO riots, what was happening during that stretch of time. It's just but my favorite part is photographing the families and children, and here's police. If you look behind them, it says "abolish cops" on the boarded up windows. Here's one of the fires down there. Just an interesting times. Here's posing in front of the squad cars doing they're trying to sell T-shirts.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Remember the guy that was pasted, he had a semi-automatic, and he was pasted into several backdrops by the conservatives. Did you ever meet him?
Yeah, so Fox News photoshopped a picture of a guy with a gun into their imagery, CHOP imagery of because basically what they were doing was saying, hey, the cities are on fire, and spreading this propaganda around. So everyone who doesn't live in Seattle thought the city was on fire and in chaos, when it actually this is just a 6-block radius. And so they thought, yeah, totally, the cities are coming apart. And then recently when I was at Trump rallies, they weaponized it, and they used it to their whole theme at a lot of these rallies was protect the suburbs, because they're destroying our cities, and if we don't stop them now, they're going to come for you in the suburbs. And so no, I didn't meet that guy, but the protesters had a sense of humor, and we might pass the photo here. They did make a cardboard cutout of him, Paul, and they put him up at the barriers to CHOP. So let's see if I can scroll. Oh, here he is. He's the guy you're talking about.
In a tutu.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they gave him a tutu. So anyway, so I can go on and on. I'm real proud of these photos. And it was a real hard, weird time to be a photographer, because you have animosity from the police, of course, but also a lot of activists who are afraid of being exposed, or afraid of their identity, police using these photos against them.
I remember that.
Surveillance and the technology, and just a lot of known unknowns, and so there's quite a bit of hostility from the protesters, and so demonstrators, I should say, and so that's a whole nother conversation. But it was very it brings up the intersection of a lot of issues, as far as privilege and surveillance and free speech and demonstration and race, and it just all into this issue of do photographers have to get consent from people before taking pictures of them at public protests, and it was really I could go on, and I'm not gonna right now.
You got through it though, right?
What's that?
You got over it, didn't you?
Well, I don't know. I learned a lot, but also, I don't know where to begin there. It's just it's a whole. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer. But it's quite a. I got harassed on social media for posting pictures, and people were mad that I wasn't blurring faces, or that I was posting the pictures in the first place, even though everyone in a lot of these pictures are wearing masks anyway, and at these demonstrations, and the riots, everyone there had a cell phone out
remember that.
taking pictures and video.
Mhm.
But people thought, I was targeted, and a lot of people were genuinely concerned for the well-being of others. Even more people were nasty and harassed me behind the scenes in private messages, and I was threatened to be doxxed. A friend of mine was doxxed on Twitter, and it's a scary world out there. And I'll tell you, and it happened because these photos went fairly viral, and I'll tell you, it's no fun going viral. It's a really, it brings out the worst in people, no matter what you're viral for. Usually it's like it comes at you and it kind of consumes your world for a few days, just navigating that. And I'll tell you, when people came at me, it was literally the worst, probably the worst ordeal I've ever gone through in my life, and definitely the worst professionally. After I thought all I was doing was making pictures. This one's funny because the first place that was looted was Old Navy, and no one actually wanted to steal anything. No one wanted anything from Old Navy, so they just trashed the place. But other places were being actively looted, and people were coming out of places with just armfuls of expensive winter jackets and things. And I made a lot of pictures that could be considered incriminating, but I didn't. If they're not artful, I don't share it. If it doesn't help progress a story, if there's not a story in the images, it's like it's not really worth much to me.
Nate,
And so I took great care in protecting people anyway.
Yeah, Michael.
Nate, when you say that people were coming after you, which people?
Well, in this case, it was people whose demonstrators whose causes I'm sympathetic with. People who didn't like me, and these it's because I'm a photojournalist, independent photojournalist. So I'm seeing what I see. I'm not a PR person for anybody. And so a lot of these people, and I saw myself as amplifying the message of the protests and amplifying their voice. Because people I photograph, there's a lot of psychologically, when you're aiming a camera at someone, I make it known I'm there. The whole month I shot these protests, Andy's listening, I had loaned my long lenses to her, thinking I wouldn't be taking photographs that month and I'd be working on this school's book. And so all I had was my 28 wide angle Leica. And so I had to make pictures, I had to get in close. I had to get in there. I'm not sniping from a ways with a telephoto. I'm right there. And so I think that gives the pictures an intimacy that isn't, always there, but also it made it so that people were very aware that I was there taking their picture, making their picture. And and usually it's not spoken, it's unspoken. It's like, it's kind of a head gesture. It's like, okay. But people I've learned over the years are very vocal when they don't want their picture taken. And whether they're vocal or not, they let you know it. And my thing is, I don't want to take pictures of people who don't want to be photographed. Plenty of people do want to be photographed. And so
how do you know beforehand
what?
That people don't want their pictures to be photographed? Their images.
I'll tell you, they let you know it. A lot of times they're standing for, it's just a plain, it's not action. They're just standing there posing for it. Or they will block their face. They'll say something. They will make it very clear they don't want their pictures taken. Especially
But that's after the fact that you grab 2 or 3 images. And then after
No. I usually take my time. I'm not rushing. Oh. Usually, if anything, I'm kind of, taking. It's not. If they're just standing there, it's not like time is of the essence. If there's action stuff, that's one thing. But if this is just like a posed portrait, like this one, it's like obviously this is a mutual mm-hmm. picture. This is not a candid. It's a candid portrait, but it's a portrait. This is a pose. They're standing there. This is a portrait. Obviously, she's okay with this picture mm-hmm. being made. Especially with kids, I do take extra care to make sure the parents are okay with it.
Yeah,
but
Melissa's
the kids are my favorite to photograph because they're just so optimistic and wide-eyed and excited about these things, whereas a lot of the adults are just jaded and don't have that same energy. So I always prefer photographing kids. If their parents are cool with it.
Yeah, Melissa was asking if the Seattle Police Department tried to get photos from the photographers.
They did. They did. There was a subpoena that a judge upheld, or I don't know if the judge. It's been a while. I'm not
Yeah.
fresh on that, but basically there was they did subpoena for footage from the news stations and the Seattle Times and stuff, and they didn't subpoena independent photojournalists, but we were scared they would, and so independent journalists did write a letter to the city's leaders saying we are wholeheartedly against this. This is not okay, because once you make us an arm of the police, that puts us in danger, and it compromises what we do, our independent, our independence.
Cool. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Do people have more questions or anything else you want to cover? Or Nate, do you have anything else you want to?
Well, I
Say about
guess
this all?
I didn't show you I'm taking so long. Let's see. Yeah, so well, on my site, if you go on my site and passion projects, you can look at Vote American. This is a lot of the 2016 stuff that I've taken. It's just a hodgepodge right now, and actually I'm starting work in earnest on my book. First, I started the year with 100,000 photos, and I've gotten it down to 47,000 photos, and I'm deleting 750 a day. And so my goal is to bring it down to less than 20,000 by the end of 2020, so I can start pairing up with friends and colleagues to do an edit and pare this down for a book. And so it's a couple months out, but I think it's going to be a really great book. The hard part is narrowing the pictures down. I got a lot of good ones, which is a good problem to have.
Hard drive.
What's that?
Oh, I
Hard
asked you
drive.
about your hard drive.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm pretty good at kind of yeah. Oh, I like this one because it has his notes in it. But anyway, there's the evil incarnate right there. So you can look at those on my website. Those are some of my faves. I also got a thing from a trip where I photographed the Mayor Pete announcement of his presidential campaign. He's actually from where I live, and so that was very exciting for me. So I used the trip as a chance to document him in South Bend in Iowa, but also visit my family. Recently, the trip. So my hard drive failed on a trip to. A week before the end of the election, I photographed six Trump rallies in 6 states in 7 days. And it would have been 7 rallies, but one got canceled as I arrived because of gusts from the remnants from the hurricane. But basically, it was self-funded, but I did it, and I reached out to my community, and I guess karma came through, and people, I was able to raise enough where the trip was fully paid for, which relieved a lot of stress, because this year with gigs, it's, all my gigs have been canceled for the year, and things have been tight. And so that really helped make this happen. And so in return, I'm gonna collect addresses and be mailing prints out to people. I think about 98 people donated to my travel fund, which was incredible, and leaves me with a little extra to paper and ink and get these prints shipped out.
And you were able to recover the files from that hard drive.
Yeah, so the hard drive in the last day of the trip, thanks John for I was in DC, and the morning after the election my glasses broke, and I had packed so light I hadn't packed an extra pair, and my hard drive failed, and it gave me a lot of anxiety, especially being on the road and after going all out on photos. And so I look how his skin kind of blends in with the orange background here, huh? But anyway, so I was really anxious and didn't know what to do, and so I basically that sealed the deal for my trip, and I had to call it a trip, because I probably would have stayed in DC for a day or two extra to see if they would have called the election, or I would have visited my dad in Indiana, and I just needed to get home. I was tired, very little sleep, but also just perturbed that I couldn't access my photos. And I found a guy locally, Dave's Data Recovery. Godsend, he did it for $400 and was able to recover everything. It took quite a while. It took about 2-3 weeks, but he got me everything. And and just wonderful to work with, very transparent and is in kind of in educating me. And so from now on forward, I will not be using a traditional external hard drive, portable hard drive. I bought 2 SanDisk 2 terabyte SSDs, and they're extremely fast. And since they don't have the spinning disk inside them, they're a lot more reliable. They're not foolproof, but but especially when you're traveling, because when you're traveling, I had everything in a backpack, and it's really hard on hard drives. And so, and I unfortunately I had a lot of data outside of my trip, that superhero project, schools project, just stuff that wasn't fully backed up. And so it just taught me a lesson. And I guess for Christmas, I might be getting myself a data management, kind of making a plan and upgrading my data management. Because right now I have an army of hard drives. I don't have anything on the cloud. I have a lot of work to do because this is my livelihood, and this is what I've been hyper obsessed with for years. And just, it's important, and it happens. So
Yeah, Michael.
I would make you a recommendation on those new flashcards that you have. So
yeah,
each one is how big?
2 terabyte.
2 terabyte on.
Yeah.
So you have 4 terabytes on 2 cards, right?
yeah.
I would suggest that you lessen the amount of data of each card and buy some additional cards.
Well, these aren't. First of all, these aren't cards. These are hard drives.
They're external drives, but they're SSD instead of spinning.
They're solid state hard drives.
Yeah.
That go into your camera?
No.
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 Oh.
Yeah. So for my camera, I use CF cards or SD cards, and I usually go up to 64 gigs a card.
And are you shooting RAW? Or are you shooting JPEG?
I'm shooting RAW for sure. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, the solid state. If I have to store my data on the road, this has been a huge upgrade, and I'm going to be preaching them to everyone, because they're really tiny little things too. And so, and they actually have a clip, so you can put it on your keychain if you wanted. So yeah,
Amazing.
so I'm a big fan, and they cost the 2 terabyte ones cost about $250 more or less. So it was worth it. So a little more cost, but the SSDs have gotten ridiculously cheaper than they were just a few years ago.
Less expensive, not cheaper.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, appreciate it. Yep.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you all.
Yeah, any questions about the trip or kind of access? How'd I get in, or kind of do the logistics or anything?
Why do you like the 28 millimeter Leica?
I like it because it's small and unassuming. It's more inconspicuous. People are more, when you approach people with a big camera, some people are, especially the crowd I was hanging around, can be really jumpy, as far as they're already kind of, what's the word? They're real cautious of the media because of the rhetoric, right-wing rhetoric, Trump rhetoric. And so it's a way for me to approach people. And because if there's nothing happening, I kind of go from photojournalism to pose portraits. It's just kind of switch gears and just take pictures of like pictures. And you can tell which ones the people are, where I'm engaging. And so, but it's just less intimidating to people, I think. And I like it because it's a little camera, so it's easier to carry 2 bodies. Because I don't have yep.
The interesting part about any 28 millimeter lens is that the reason why most photojournalists love the 28 millimeter lens is because when you make an 8x10 print, it looks normal to your eye.
Oh yeah. No, it looks very normal.
Okay.
Yep. I used to shoot wider and really embrace the distortion, but the 28 I've settled with because yeah, you're right. It's just perfect as far as not too much distortion, but it is wider than your vision of seeing. So big fan of it, and it was an affordable Leica. I bought it used. I bought it for $3K, and about the only Leica I could afford. So, and it's extremely sharp. It's not very great at high ISOs. It's kind of disappointing at ISOs. but it's so sharp you can and with black and white you can embrace grain and that grittiness. So at high ISOs. So especially, yeah, same with my other camera. I think another reason I like black and white is you can embrace that stuff, and it just kind of looks old school instead of yeah. It's harder to hide technical things in color. So
Well, thank you. This has been great.
so yeah, I don't know. Thank you, John. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, anyone have anything else? I'm kind of
We're on a roll.
So yeah, thanks for having me, John. I'm really thankful to you for doing these.
Sure.
It's quite a fun thing, and it's neat to see how people have embraced technology during this time.
Yeah, so Thursday coming up is Thanksgiving. I don't have anything scheduled, but I may hang out in the room just because people aren't traveling and maybe bored hanging around. If you want to talk about photos, I guess I'll start up the meeting on Thursday, but
Sweet.
no special topic.
Sweet. Yep.
So-
So I'm just cold season. I'm just I probably won't be taking much photos next few months. We'll see if there are more anti-mask protests or stop the steal protest, which I'll try and make here and there. But for the most part, just curating what I've got, and trying to find a way to prioritize and finance the book.
Cool.
And so look forward to keeping everyone posted. So, but thanks for tuning in and listening. And
I'm curious to hear from you. What is this? Go back to the previous. The guy with the hand. What is this guy hoping to accomplish by doing this? Is he doing a Harry Benson kind of thing?
oh, well, they kind of one people assert that, it's a real, I think by having a camera, it's kind of my power at these things, it's
No,
a real,
the hand up.
well, I think he's doing the same thing. I'm like, well, I think it's kind of saying, I don't know. I like when I'm interpreting his body language, but I think he's blocking me from taking his picture, but at the same time saying, hey, look, I can take your picture too. Kind of just there's a lot of hostility, and I do a good job of disarming people, but at the same time, there's a lot of just weird times and they do not like the media. And so I don't wear a press badge. I don't really kind of go out of my way to to be the media, and a lot of time I'm doing this for myself. So technically I'm not.
How do the police know that you are a photojournalist?
They don't care. Like, I don't know, sometimes I'll take point. I'll wear helmets that say photo press on them. And I will, and I do have press badges. But a lot of times the police don't care. They will target you if you're here. My friend just handed me. So I have this, white, very seen. I have a gas mask stuff, but they don't give a crap. I have a friend who's a 74-year-old Vietnam combat vet. He's an activist. He likes to go out and do photos and video protests. July 25th in Seattle, he got shot 4 times with rubber bullets. When they hit you that many times, they're targeting you. That's no accident. And then he got staples in his head and stitches in his leg, and then he got an infection. And he's always carried a gun. He had the gun concealed on his hip in a fanny pack, and blast ball shrapnel shattered the grip of the gun. That could have been his hip. And again, he was just an old man with a camera who they were targeting. We have video of it. And so that, like I said, they have animosity towards us too. We are not safe. They lump us in the same category as protesters very often. So it doesn't matter if I identify myself or not, in my opinion. Outwardly identify myself. So it just depends the circumstances, but I hold them in hot. I'm not yeah, I'm afraid of the police more so than I've ever been of protesters or activists or demonstrators. So once you get them together in that militaristic thing, they don't de-escalate. Their job is, well, they're not their job, but they escalate. They're agitating to start trouble just as much as some people on the other side might be. And so but they're dangerous. They're carrying guns
Yeah.
as opposed to signs or whatever. Anyway,
Cool. I'm going to shut down the Facebook feed here. And thank everyone for joining us today. So,
Thank you.
cool.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, see y'all on the other side.
sounds
Great
good.
seeing you, Nate. Thanks so much.
Yep, take care.
Hey, good seeing you, Rasp. Yep.
Hey,
Thank you,
yep.
John.
We're from Nate's hometown in Indiana,
Good to meet you.
Where
Thank
is
you.
it? South Bend, or where are you from? Nate?
Elkhart.
Oh, Elkhart. Okay, my husband's from South Bend.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
we're east of that, right?
So thanks, Melissa, for joining in.
Looking
Bye,
forward
guys.
to buying more of your books.
Good to see you. See you on the streets soon, I
Well, there will
hope.
be a few. There will be the political book. It's called Vote American, and then there will be a superhero book after that. So, but we're
Yeah,
not done
and
with that
our
one.
daughter has the one that you published for the schools, and she uses it with her LGBTQ
Clients.
clients. Yep.
That's
Loves
amazing.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
she loves it. She's so excited.
Yeah, that's really neat. It's out there and making an impact. So
Yeah.
feels
Yeah.
good, especially in this year of just whatever
This
this
year.
year's been. To
All you have
kinda
to say is 2020.
20 something 2020 it did something, kind of did something
Good.
good, so it feels good.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Bye, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.